Yo, welcome back to a brand new video here on the second channel. It's been a while since I've done a tier list video, and I've been doing a lot of post-station content, so I thought it would be time to do another tier list. Today, we're going to be ranking every single format that was in the Pokemon TCG, the popular ones. Shout out to Whimsigas once again for creating this. I think we did one where we ranked all of the mechanics in the TCG, but now we're going to be ranking all of the popular formats. Now, I haven't played every single format in the world. In fact, I basically started probably around like 2010 Worlds is when I really started to get into the game, or at the very least like 2009 Worlds. So I wasn't really playing these older formats. So I'm not gonna say much about these. I don't want to speak on these older formats if I haven't played them. In my opinion, it just doesn't really make sense to me. So I'm gonna throw all of these in, and I'm sure they would rank a lot higher than where I'm putting them. But I didn't play in a lot of these older formats. So I'm just going to put those there. But if y'all want to go on to enjoy the video and you want to leave a like on the video and all that good stuff, make sure to leave a like. If you're new to the second channel, make sure to subscribe down below. I'm going to try to do more tier lists because it's been a while since I've done a tier list video. But I thought it'd be a cool idea to kind of give my insight, talk about how good the format was, give some feedback on it, what made the format good, what made the format bad, what they could have improved upon, all the good stuff. Just pretty good feedback in my opinion. So I think it'd be a really cool idea to kind of talk about these formats and kind of give my thoughts as to how good they were, because I have been playing for a while. My memory's a little fuzzy. I did open up another website to kind of look at some of the older formats to kind of get more of an insight as to why they were good or bad. So I can't remember everything, but especially the modern stuff I'll be better at. But some of the older stuff that I did play in, not as memorable. But yeah, we got Diamond and Pearl here. Arceus. I think that was a pretty solid format. We can put that in A tier. In fact, I really do think a lot of these older the older Diamond and Pearl era formats are definitely A tier, arguably even S tier. They were pretty good formats, man. I'm not gonna lie. They were pretty good formats, all things considered. Mainly because they were just fun. They weren't power crap. There was a lot of powerful decks. I think the big thing about these decks were like there was a lot of donking back in the day. Rare Candy and Broken Time Space were very good cards. Stuff like Machamp, Kingdra, Sableye. There was a lot of donking. There was Shuppet Donk too. There was a lot of donk decks back in the day, which I guess was like the negative part about these older formats is how good Donk was. And then you did have like the broken SP mechanic with Luxchomp being by far the best deck in the format. Luxchomp you could honestly compare to something like Lugia. Luxchomp was a very good deck, but the format was a lot slower. Obviously, there were no two-prize, multi-prize Pokemon. The format was just better. I really do think a lot of these older formats, like from the Diamond and Pearl era, are regarded as some of the best, and I definitely got to put them in A tier. Again, my memory is a little bit fuzzier with these older formats, so like I can't say they're like immediately S tier, but I just really like the older formats a lot for what they were worth. It's just a more nostalgic and better time to be playing the game, in my opinion. But I definitely think they're all A tier, and I mean, one of these definitely could be S tier for sure, no doubt about it. I was a big fan of, like, well, Majestic Dawn to Black and White was pretty good, because there was a huge card pool, so there's more to choose from. I really did like Majestic Dawn to Call of Legends too. You can see Vileplume is shown there, because Vileplume was a very good card when it came out. Vileplume at Gengar was a very good deck back in the day. I did really enjoy this format, though. We got 2011 Worlds, which I think came before HeartGold and Noble Victories. 2011 Worlds was another A-tier format. This was, of course, the debut of The Truth, one of the most iconic decks of all time. The Truth is definitely a very, very cool deck, and I really do think that it deserves to be an A-tier because, again, a bigger variety of decks. I mean, there's Reshiflosion, Magnabore, there was, you know, Yen Mega Prime decks, there were Stage 1 decks basically in total. Of course, you did have The Truth, which was a very popular deck and a very cool and unique rogue deck when it came out. I don't know why I said it was a popular deck. It was not a popular deck. It was just a really cool deck when it came out. Very unique deck. One of the most unique decks I think we've ever seen. So definitely an A-tier format. And then, of course, we have HeartGold SoulSilver to Noble Victories. I'm going to put this in S tier. This was a very good format. So, basically, this format had rotated out the Diamond and Pearl block, and the format was a little bit slower. Of course, you had stuff like Donphan Prime, you had Mega Prime, Cinccino, Zoroark, you had Magnezone Prime, you had Mew Prime, you had Vileplume, but then you had the other big decks too, like Reshiram and Zekrom. The power creep wasn't as bad because you did have like Reshiram and Zekrom, which were obviously really good decks, but they weren't like, it wasn't as bad as like people thought, right? The power creep was not there yet. This was quite literally one set before the EXs debuted, right? And then, of course, a specific EX came out, which really changed the entire landscape of the game going forward, and this was just before that, which is what makes this format good, is this was like just before that little bit before EXs came out, and I thought it was a really good format. HeartGold Silvers to Noble Victories is a great format in my opinion. I love it. I'm going to put that in S tier. It's one of my favorite nostalgic formats because it's a good format. It was just before the power creep. There were good decks, but there was also a good variety of good decks. It wasn't just like one deck dominating. It was just a great format in my opinion. So I definitely want to put that in S tier. And then of course we have 2012 Worlds. This was the debut of a lot of the big EXs, mainly Mewtwo EX, which we can kind of take a look at here. I did pull up another website, Pokemon TCG Archive, and it did archive what the format was. And as you can see, the format was basically just EXs or bust. As you can see, a lot of Mewtwo and a lot of Darkrai EX was basically the name of the game in this format. And it just made it not a good format, man. I mean, as you can see, there's like a few decent decks. You got like Chandelure, Selgor, you had Magnabore, which is something that we haven't seen in a while, but like it was just basically Mewtwo Darkrai Wars. It really sucked. And then you had like a hint of Terrakion in there, obviously, but that was kind of the main issue with this format, is that it was basically just big EX Pokemon or bust. And it just made the format really, really boring and really bad. You know what I mean? It was just a very one-note format. You just had to play a big EX, and that's the problem with the EX Pokemon. The format before Worlds, though, like when we had just Mewtwo EX, like when Mewtwo EX had just came out, that's when the format was like really bad. And honestly, 2012 Worlds probably is a C tier format. You could even argue it's one of the worst formats we've ever had. I don't know if I can say it was that bad. If we're talking like before Darkrai EX came out, this format definitely would have been like in the trash tier. The format before Darkrai came out, it was just Mewtwo Wars. That was a really bad format. I think that definitely would be a trash tier format. Even though it's an old format, people might look back at it with nostalgia. That doesn't matter. It doesn't make the format better. And 2012 Worlds just barely isn't one of the worst formats. It definitely wasn't great though by any means, but I don't think that was as bad as like other formats we've had. It just was a very uninspired, very uncreative format. It was just nothing but Mewtwo Darkrai variants. It was just there wasn't much diversity. It was just you play the two big EX Pokemon in the format. You might play a couple Pokemon to help you. You'd play a Terrakion in your deck to help you out. You might play a Tornadus EX. I don't know. You just play like tech cards to help against those. But for the most part, it was just Mewtwo Darkrai Wars, and it just wasn't very fun. It was a very bland format. Not one of the worst in my opinion. I don't think it was as bad as people make it out to be, but it definitely was not anywhere near that good. 2013 Worlds, I did pull up here. This was a bit of an improvement over last year's Worlds. There was a little bit more variety. You can still see Darkrai is the best deck. Of course, Jason Klaczynski did win Worlds with Darkrai. But you had like the Team Plasma decks. You did have the Blastoise Black Kyurem. You had Garbodor variants with Darkrai. Rayquaza Eels was a decent deck too back then. You had Flareon. Kling Clang was another really unique deck that kind of debuted in that era. That was a really fun deck. A lot of Kling Clang. There's a couple of Kling Clang here in the top 64. But overall, the format was like basically just not slightly better, but it was definitely an improvement over the last format. I'll put it in B tier. I did like 2013 Worlds, and honestly, looking back, and this is actually around the time I stopped playing IRL and kind of went specifically to TCGO only. I don't know. Looking back, it was a decent format. Again, Blastoise was pretty good, so we finally had like a Stage 2 be relevant again. We had Team Plasma was a really fast deck. Darkrai was still obviously insanely good. So you could argue this was still a good format, but I'm gonna put it in B tier because again, it was kind of like the selling point was like this is really drilling home that this is the format where EXs are gonna dominate. The one prize decks are a thing of the past. There might be a few one prize decks sprinkled here and there that might do well, but it's just basically it's a two prize all out brawl. And it's a fine format. I'll put in the B tier. I'm a little nostalgic for it, but I'm not going to let the nostalgia really impact my opinion on the format overall, because realistically speaking, if this was the format we were playing today, I'm sure a lot of people would complain about some things in the meta. So I think it's still a B tier format in my opinion. I might get roasted for that take. I know a lot of OG players might hate me on that one, but I don't think 2013 Worlds was any better than a B tier format. Maybe a better B tier format than some of the other formats that I might end up putting in the B tier. And then we got the 2014 Next Destinies to X and Y format. The debut of Yveltal. This format, it's interesting. You could argue it's A tier or B tier. I think the thing is that Yveltal EX was basically the new age of Mewtwo EX. It's basically the same card as Mewtwo. It did have very similar attacks. Of course, Evil Ball was stronger than X Ball at the time. And Yveltal had a lot of support. I mean, you had Darkrai and Dark Patch in the format. You had the baby Yveltal, which was pretty good. The big thing with Yveltal, though, was trying to be countered by Raichu. The Raichu that came out next and Y was kind of the counter to Yveltal. This format wasn't that bad, though. I am a little nostalgic for it. But like, the X and Y set didn't really offer too much of the format. Like, we still had all the same decks dominating. You had Verzi and Genesect. You know, really the only deck that came out was just Eviltal. Like, the X and Y set wasn't that impactful of a set. There was a few cool cards, like Muscle Band was pretty big. Again, the Raichu was pretty solid. Eviltal EX obviously being the big boy of the set. I think it's a B tier set. It kind of introduced the X and Y era by, you know, giving us the first set, but it didn't really change much other than give us Eviltal EX was just a very good card, but mostly everything stayed the same. I'm going to give it a B tier. 2014 Worlds is another interesting meta. Of course, my boy Andrew Estrada won Worlds. He is Canadian. Verzi and Genesect did win Worlds. Verzi and Genesect's a good deck. I guess it's B tier. I don't know. That's tough to say. Because it's another format that basically was dominated by, like, the two prize Pokemon, like Virizion EX, Genesect EX, Blastoise Keldeo was still really good, Darkrai was good, Landorus, I think, was good, too, back then, Blastoise Keldeo, I think, was still a deck that people played. Just, again, it's just another, like, really, like, fast format, where it's, like, you play a big two prize Pokemon that just does big things. And Virizion Genesect was a very good deck because of how good the deck was at countering things. Of course, Virizion was able to shut off things like Laser, which was big. Genesect had a really good gust ability, which was one of the things that made it really powerful, is that gust ability specifically. So definitely an interesting deck. An interesting mechanic was the Virizion EX deck, but I don't know, looking back, I'm not a fan of it. When I play Legacy, I actually do not like Virizion Genesect in Legacy because the gust is kind of cheesy. I don't know, 2014 Worlds is B tier in my opinion. It's another, like, B tier format. I can't really call it one of the best, but I can't call it like it was a bad format. You know what I mean? Then we got 2015 Worlds. This was a really cool format. 2015 Worlds was a lot more unique because things had really changed up until that point. The cool thing was that we saw, like, a really unique deck win the entire tournament at Worlds. And, of course, we saw the Blastoise Arceus deck win Worlds that year. That was really awesome to witness. I remember witnessing that firsthand. I remember watching the stream live and seeing the Blastoise Keldeo deck win. There's a lot of other crazy things that happened at the 2015 World Championships. It definitely was not a bad format. I actually would call it one of the better formats. Just there was more diversity with the decks. We were kind of getting deeper into the X and Y era, which did really help this format quite a bit. Improve over, like, 2014 Worlds, which was just, once again, I mean, and big basic EX. I'm not saying that 2015 wasn't dominated by big basics. Obviously, it was. And, I mean, you could argue it was a little bit faster, too. I mean, being able to Arceus out a Blastoise in one turn was kind of nuts. And that is still very fast and does make the deck fast and speeds up how fast, you know, things were at the time. But I think 2015 Worlds was a lot better than 2014 Worlds, in my opinion. So put that at A tier. And then, of course, we have the Primal Clash to Evolving Skies format. Primal Clash to... Wait, that wasn't Primal Clash to Evolving Skies, was it? I guess it was the sets that came out. My bad. Was it the sets that came out? Am I just blind? I think it was. Yeah, because that's clearly Primal Clash. I think it was just those two sets that come out. It was a decent format. Kind of nostalgic for it. Mega Ray had come out. Of course, Skyfield also came out. And, of course, we also had the introduction of Shaymin EX, which was a big game changer. VS Seeker got reprinted. Primal Clash gave us a few cool cards, like Primal Groudon, Primal Kyogre, Dive Ball. Mega Gardevoir was decent, too, looking back at it. But, yeah, no, I think it's an A-tier format. I really did like the 2016 era with Primal Clash and Evolving Skies, or Roaring Skies, sorry. Oh, that's Primal Clash Evolutions. My bad. That's Evolutions. Why did I'm sorry. I am just out of it today, apparently. No, that's Evolutions. I thought that... I really get Roaring Skies and Evolving Skies mixed up all the time. I apologize. I get those two sets mixed up. I get the names mixed up all the time. No, that's Evolutions. All right, my bad. Yeah, decent little set. I think that did come before... That came after Worlds, I'm pretty sure. It was a fine format. Worlds format was kind of cool. Night March was, like, the big deck to beat. And, of course, Shintaro Ito did win Worlds with the Mega Audino deck, which was a really cool counter deck to Night March. Him winning the tournament with that deck was really cool. And Mega Audino was a really cool deck. But just in general, the 2016 Worlds format was perfectly fine. I think it's an A-tier format alongside, like, the Primal Clash Evolving... I almost said Evolving Skies again. Oh, my God. The Evolutions format were pretty good formats. Because you had the Mega Pokemon being good. The Power Creep... It didn't really slow down that much because, like, Night March was still really, really good, and, like, you had Seismitoad still existed, but it definitely wasn't a bad format. Both formats were pretty good in my opinion. I think they're both kind of A-tier formats. They were pretty solid. The Worlds format and then after Worlds format were both good. But then we get into the more modern era of the game with the Sun and Moon expansions. And the Sun and Moon era, in my opinion, is where the TCG really, I guess, like, real things got really, really good, because this was definitely a really good format. Of course, we do have Primal Clash to Guardians Rising. Honestly, this might be an S tier format. Looking back, man, it's just a very nostalgic format. Now, the GX Pokemon had come out at this time, and they were really, really good. They were really good cards. I mean, and they were not. GXs were way different than EXs, right? Because some of them evolved, and the ones that evolved were good. I mean, you had Metagross GX was really good. Decidueye GX obviously was really good. You had like Stage 1 GXs like Alolan Ninetales. You had Umbreon GX, which was okay. You had Espeon GX was also very good. But then you had like the basics like Drampa GX. You had Lapras GX, which were good. Lele GX obviously being another big one. And it just was a different time. And then you had cards like Garbodor Trash Lance that came out. You had Mindjack Zork from Breakthrough. So you just had really good Stage 1s and basics. You had a good mix of everything, basically. That's what made this format so good. It was a good mix of everything. You had cards that kind of kept things in check, like Garbodor. Items were all the rage at the time. You had Max Elixir, you had, Via Seekers, all that good stuff. There were so many cards at the time, and a lot of items, and they were kind of kept in check by Garbodor. So Garbodor kind of did come in and save the format a little bit, and I think that this was definitely, looking back, one of the best formats we've ever had. It was definitely Primal Clash to Guardians Rising. I'm going to give this an S tier because it was a good mix of everything. I mean, I remember at the time, I made videos around this time. I remember at the time, man, I was not a fan of Garbodor at all. I thought it was a really dumb card, but looking back, it kind of was a good card. It was healthy for the game, and it was just a good mix of everything at the time, right? Just S tier format, in my opinion. Good mix of basic decks, 2-prize decks. There was a lot of Stage 2s at the time. There was good Stage 1s. There was good, 1-prize Pokemon. It just was a great format, in my opinion. Definitely an S tier format by far. 2017 Worlds was pretty good, too. I'm going to put that in S tier. It was pretty sweet. I mean, the cool thing about this format was it actually debuted a new set release with Burning Shadows, right? You had Golisopod and Gardevoir really kind of made their impact. I still think 2017 Worlds was a great format. Gardevoir GX was a very strong deck, but it didn't Gardevoir didn't last that long in terms of being the most broken dominant deck forever, because while the deck obviously debuted and was a very powerful deck, it didn't last that long. As soon as Shining Legends came out, the mini set that came out I think after this, before Crimson Invasion, that's when the tides really shifted. But Gardevoir was a really good deck. Obviously, it won Worlds. It was kind of the talk of the format. Golisopod, it was another really cool card. Golisopod's one of my favorite cards. I think one of my favorite GXs of all time. It's just a really, really cool card. And Golisopod Garb was a really cool deck, really good deck. And you still had all the other decks that carried over from the other Sun and Moon sets that were still pretty good. I think it was still, S tier set for sure. S tier set. I liked it. S tier format. Burning Shadows was a fun time. I liked it. I'm going to put both, S tier. I think they were both S tier in my opinion. Pretty solid formats. Next up, we had 2018 Sun and Moon to Lost Thunder. Probably give that A tier. Obviously, Blounds was really big. You had a lot of the big, Ultra Beast decks in general that were good. Buzzwole was good. I think it's A tier. I'm not super nostalgic for it because I feel like the format kind of went back to the big, basic, fast format that we were trying to get away from, or we were kind of getting away from in the year previously with 2017, where there's a good mix of basics, Stage 1, Stage 2s. But then we were just getting back into kind of a big basic meta where Buzzwole was just insanely fast and powerful. Kind of really did a good job beating a lot of the single prize decks. Blacephalon, another big powerful one at KO deck. Things started to kind of shift back to that meta where it wasn't as great. And we had 2018 Worlds. Obviously, Zoroark was huge at the time. Another A tier format. Obviously, Zorogarb winning Worlds was really, really cool. Really unique take on the Zoroark deck. Because Zoroark was being paired with Golisopod. It was being paired with a lot of different cards. I think it was Golisopod. Lycanroc was obviously another big one. But then you just had this Zoroark Garbodor deck out of nowhere win the tournament. It was just really cool to see. It was just a unique take. Zoroark, looking back, Zoroark GX. Maybe at the time a lot of people hated it because it was a Zoroark dominated format. But looking back, Zoroark was a very creative card, and there were so many ways that people had come up with cool different takes on the Zoroark deck itself that I don't know. Looking back, man, I don't think Zoroark was that bad for the game. I don't know. It's hard to say. It wasn't it was definitely very, very good and dominating, but because of all the different ways people came up with different ways to play Zoroark, that it actually ended up being cool. It's not like Lugia, where it's just one basic Lugia deck. You just have Lugia, and everyone just kind of plays the same builds of Lugia. It kind of reminded me of Lost Box, actually, in a way, where there were different ways to play the Zoroark deck, kind of like there is different ways to play the Lost Box deck. So I can probably, you can put this in A tier. It's definitely a good format. And you had Sun and Moon to team up, another pretty solid format. The format was basically just before tag teams got really broken, right? Just before we saw, like, tag teams be pretty broken with, like, Reshizard, and then obviously with, like, Mewtwo and ADP and stuff. This just had, like, Pika Rom, Celisaur, Gengar Mimikyu, but Gengar Mimikyu was actually a meme deck at the time with the Omastar. It wasn't actually, like, a legit card that people really thought was bad for the game. Gengar Mimikyu was more of a meme. Pika Rom was the big one, obviously, that came out. But the format was pretty solid. I think the big thing was, like, Zap Beast was really good, but the format was, like, balanced out by, like, Zoroark being good. Believe it or not, actually, I think Zoroark kind of got power crept out of the format after this little format we had here with Sun Moon to team up. But honestly, it's a pretty solid format. I look back at it, it's pretty good, because we did have 3 prize Pokemon, but the 3 prize Pokemon weren't just dominating the format and weren't, like, insanely good, because they were kind of kept in check by other Pokemon that were good at the time. Obviously, stuff like Zoroark, Buzzwole, Lucario, GX, I remember, was pretty good at the time too because of how it countered Pika Rom. You had Zap Beast, which was another huge deck at the time that helped keep, like, the dominance of, like, these 3 prize deck in check. It just was a really cool format. I remember Celisaur was also a popular deck at the time that was good. I think Tord Reklev kind of popularized the Celisaur deck, but yeah, man, I don't know. Good format. Part of me wants to put an S tier, but I don't think it's, like, that great. Like, I don't think it's S tier material, but definitely a really solid format all around. And then you added the Sun and Moon Unbroken Bonds format. This is where the power creep really kicked in. Reshizard kind of introduced donking again. I mean, you had Zappies, which could donk, but, like, Reshizard was able to do 200 damage on the first turn of the game with Welder. Welder was a really good card. I think this was, like, before, like, a rule change with Supporter. I gotta put this in B tier. Looking back, was not the biggest fan of this format because I really thought that Reshizard started to ruin the game again, where it's like you just had this really big, basic Pokemon with a monstrous amount of HP, did a lot of damage, KO'd stuff. It could attack on the first turn of the game because of how good Welder was. It kind of made the format center around the big 3 prizers, and that just wasn't a fun time. I know Evilax and Reshizard were the 2 big Pokemon that were played with Welder. Pika Rom was still really good, and obviously, like, Zoroark still saw play, but Zoroark kind of fell off because Zoroark just couldn't compete with Reshizard at all. And it, like, kind of ruined the format, man. It just kind of started to make things a little bit... It really started to power creep. I think Reshizard is the first tag team that really started to power creep the tag teams into the forefront, which, obviously, we all know nobody really likes a tag team Pokemon. And Reshizard, I think, really started to be the downfall of the format in that regard. Then, of course, we have Ultra Prism to Cosmic Eclipse. Now, the 2019 Worlds came before that. I guess we should probably count that before. I'm trying to go in chronological order, but... I mean, we'll talk about 2019 Worlds. 2019 Worlds was fine. I guess we'll put it in A tier. I think the thing with this format was that it was a fresh format, so there wasn't anything before this 2019 Worlds format. So, like, basically, going into the format, you just had to test a post-rotation format, right? And that's what made it cool. It's basically like, let's say, it's basically like the EUIC format or a tournament we're about to have, right? EUIC is happening in, a month from now, right? Basically a month from now almost, right? EUIC is going to be the first major tournament in the post-rotation format. We have to look at Japan to kind of see what things were, but this was, like, comparable to what this was. So I think the unique thing about the 2019 Worlds format was nobody really knew going in what was really the BDIF. It was kind of just a fresh format that you just had to think, well, I tested with all my friends. I think this deck is probably the best. And we saw that Mewtwo won the tournament. We also had other cool decks. You had the Tord Turbo Fire deck. Blacephalon was still obviously really good too. Pika Rom and Malamar were still being played. It's just a cool format. I think what makes the format good was that it was unique. And honestly, there was a decent bit of variety in the format itself. Mewtwo GX was obviously a very powerful card. Obviously, Mewtwo Tag Team might even be maybe even the best tag team Pokemon besides ADP. And yeah. And then, of course, we had Ultra Prism to Cosmic Eclipse. Now, you see ADP. ADP was not as broken. As you can see, it doesn't say Ultra Prism Cosmic Eclipse. It doesn't say Sword and Shield. This was before ADP became a huge issue. ADP was still decent, though. I mean, ADP Keldeo was like a popular deck at the time. Honestly, pretty solid format. I liked it. I enjoyed the Ultra Prism Cosmic Eclipse format quite a bit. ADP was a good deck, but ADP was not the best deck in the room. I thought the format was totally fine. I thought it was fine. It reminded me a little bit of, like, the Sun and Moon team-up format, where it's like tag teams were, like, really popular, but tag teams weren't, like, I don't know, it wasn't, like, the format did kind of warp around them, but it wasn't that bad, in my opinion. It wasn't as bad as the Reshizard format, in my opinion, of the Unbroken Bonds format. I didn't think it was as bad as that, in my opinion. So I liked this format. I think Ultra Prism to Cosmic Eclipse was actually a pretty fine format. Looking back at it, it wasn't that bad, because ADP was good, but ADP wasn't the most broken deck on the planet. But then the pandemic happened, and that's where things really, really started to change. And that's where things got a lot different. with, of course, the 2020 POG format, Ultra Prism 2, Darkness Ablaze. Oh man, this was a pretty rough time to be playing the TCG, mainly because of the dominance of ADP. Basically, ADP ruled the pandemic. I mean, the whole, like, pandemic format was just ADP or bust. We had, like, other VMAXs come out, like Dragapult VMAX, Eternatus VMAX came out, but the format then started to play cards like Crushing Hammer, which started to ruin the game even more. Crushing Hammer becoming popular again really made the format a lot worse because it basically came down to, like, coin flips. ADP was just a really dumb deck. When ADP got Zacian and Metal Saucer and Energy Switch, man, that's when the format just completely went downhill. And I really do think that the 2020 format that we were living in at the time was really bad and is one of the worst formats I think we've ever had, in my opinion. Just a bad format all around. Looking back, I mean, and it got even worse with, like, Vivid Voltage. When Vivid Voltage came out, the format didn't get any better. It just kind of kept staying really, really bad. Vivid Voltage, at the time, too, didn't really save the format. The format didn't really get good until, like, around Battle Styles was when things kind of got revived a little bit and the format slightly improved. But, man, that whole 2020, honestly, maybe even the entirety of 2020 itself, the game was just really, the format was bad. I would not want to replay any of the 2020, formats at all because it was just a bad time to be playing the game. I mean, ADP was just ridiculously broken. It was not fun to play. People had to make like ADP banned tournaments to make the format fun. That's how bad it was. Like, it sucked, man. I thought that the 2020, the entirety of the year itself, like, I don't think there was a single format in 2020 that was good. It was just all bad formats, just unfun formats. I was a content creator at the time, and making the transition over into a full-time content creator this time, I don't know, man. Looking back, man, I'm like, ugh, I shudder at the thought of ADP, bro. Then we had, of course, the 2021 formats. We had Team Up to Chilling Reign, which, I mean, Battle Styles should maybe be on here, but Team Up Chilling Reign was fine. I'll put it in B tier. I mean, VMAXs were good. Obviously, ADP was still really good, but the card pool was actually getting a little bit bigger. Of course, you know, Shadow Rider come out, Ice Rider come out. Galarian Moltres V, I think, was good at the time. Looking back, this format was perfectly fine. I liked it quite a bit, honestly. I thought it was fine. I'll put it in the B tier. Again, it just was still, like, basically just, like, ADP and stuff, Rapid Urshifu, Shadow Rider, but the format wasn't really that bad. I thought it was pretty fine. I'm going to put it in B tier, though, just because, like, I still don't think that 3 prizers were good for the game in general, but looking back to, you know, 2 years ago, you know, the format was good. And then we had, honestly, one of my favorite formats, the Team Up to Evolving Skies meta. I'm putting that in the A tier. Honestly, I low-key want to put this in S tier. I might actually, you know what, that's a really hot take. I really like Team Up to Evolving Skies because the card pool was so big. Evolving Skies gave us so many cool new cards, and the meta was really, really interesting at the time. I personally really, really enjoyed the Team Up to Evolving Skies format. I even won a tournament at this time, too. I won a tournament with, like, a pre-rotation Sylveon VMAX deck that used cards from the Team Up era. So, like, I really liked this meta. There was so many different decks to play, so many unique concepts and stuff that I think really we didn't get to see a lot of until, you know, rotation happened so soon that we didn't really get to make the most of the Team Up Evolving Skies format. But I personally really liked this format a lot. I genuinely thought that the Team Up Evolving Skies era was an S tier format. That might be a bit of a hot take, but I really liked the format. I thought it was a really fun format. It was a really good format. And a lot of things were happening, man. I liked it a lot. It just was very short-lived, and that was kind of the issue. But I don't know. I was a huge fan of this. I was a huge fan of this era. I was a huge fan of the Team Up to Evolving Skies format. I think even back when I was doing content around this time, I even was saying, man, I don't want this format to end because I really liked it. Then we had the Sword and Shield Evolving Skies meta. I mean, it was fine. B tier, I guess. It basically was the Inteleon meta. Everyone was playing Inteleon decks at the time. Obviously, there were, like, some decks like Single Strike, but it was, like, basically just everyone was playing Inteleon decks, basically. It basically was the meta. It was kind of stale, kind of boring. Also, there was no mana fee at the time, so Jolteon and Rapid Urshifu kind of gatekept a lot of single prize decks. So it basically was just you play a VMAX Pokemon with Inteleon. It was kind of a bland format. Actually, you know what? I'm going to put this in C tier. I thought the Sword and Shield to Evolving Skies format was just straight up bland and boring. It was just really dominated by Inteleon, and I don't know. It was a boring format in my opinion. There's also no bench barrier, so you couldn't even play single price decks because of just there's no bench barrier to protect yourself from Urshifu, and everyone was just playing Inteleon with a VMAX Pokemon of their choice. It was kind of a bland format. I don't know. It's C tier. I don't think it was one of the worst formats by any means. Just kind of a boring, bland format. Then, of course, we have the Sword and Shield to Brilliant Stars era. Fantastic format. Honestly, you know what? I might put that in the S tier. I'm a huge fan of this meta. I think Arceus V-Star really made the game a lot more fun again, because we were coming out of the Fusion Strike format, which would probably be in the trash tier. Is it even on here? No, I don't think it's even on here. I don't see the Fusion Strike format on here. Yeah, Sword and Shield the Fusion Strike was an awful format. It was just Mew VMAX, and it was a bad format, man. Like, it was bad. It was not a good format at all. I think I'd put that in the trash tier, but honestly, Arceus V-Star Brilliant Stars just really saved the format. And looking back to last year, man, it was a great format. Also, it was when tournaments started coming back, so it was just a great time, man. And I honestly was a fan of Arceus. I thought Arceus V-Star, when it was the only good V, like the big V-Star at the time, I thought it was healthy for the game for Arceus to be the only good V-Star. Because before we got like Astral Radiance and Palkia, Arceus being the best V-Star really made for some really just interesting developments. I mean, I thought that the Sword and Shield Brilliant Stars era was a great format. Looking back at it, I really enjoyed this format a lot. I thought it was really, really good. I think it was great. Yeah, no, I really liked it. The amount of diversity. Arceus made so many random VMAX Pokemon all of a sudden, like, really good. Like, Crobat VMAX became really good. I think at this time, like, stuff like Gyarados VMAX started to be good. But then you also had, like, Urshifu started to become an even better deck again. Of course, you had that, like, Urshifu and Teleon, a bunch of one-ofs dot deck. That was a really cool deck, too. Just, it was a great format, in my opinion. I thought this was a great format. Yeah, Brilliant Stars, the Brilliant Stars meta, great format. I liked it. I'm putting that in S tier. Then, of course, we had the Astral Radiance meta. Sword and Shield Astral Radiance was, B tier, I guess. Palkia kind of made the meta very one note, in my opinion. Yeah, Palkia kind of made the meta very one note. There were still a lot of cool decks at the time. I don't think it was as bad as the Worlds format. But, like, before the development of Worlds format, I thought that, like, the format was just kind of, like, it was very bland and vanilla. You basically just had to play a type checking dot deck, and it just wasn't very fun. Like, your deck had to basically type check Palkia or type check whatever big deck at the time there was. You basically would just play a deck that hit things for weakness, and that just wasn't fun. Very bland format. Honestly, this could even be C tier in my opinion. The more I think about it, the more I just don't like it. Even Worlds, like the 2022 Worlds format was also kind of trash. Put that in the C tier. It's another bad format. It's just basically, it was a very vanilla and bland format because Palkia was just such a ridiculously strong deck that the format just ended up being you play a deck that hits for weakness. That's it. That's the format. That's why Arceus Decidueye won, because it just hit for weakness on two of the biggest decks. You had Decidueye to hit Arceus weakness, you had Pikachu to hit Palkia weakness. There wasn't really much diversity. There wasn't much innovation. There wasn't much like room for improvement. It was just you had to play a deck that hit for weakness. That was it. The games were decided by who went first, who hit for weakness first. Kind of sucked, to be honest. I mean, honestly, you could even argue this was a bad format. You know what? 2022 Worlds might even be a bad format. Hot take here. I legit think this might have been one of the trash formats because, I don't know, man, you look back at last year, this is basically, you just played a deck that hit for weakness. It sucked. Like, the meta wasn't very fun. It was like, you go first, you lose. I don't know, man. I wasn't a fan of the format. I thought it was pretty bad, in my opinion. I'm going to put that in trash tier. I don't know. Worlds 2022, it was a boring format. It sucked. It sucked. It was basically hit your opponent for weakness, win the game, right? Then Lost Origin came out, and that's where things improved. I'm going to put that in the A tier. I mean, the whole Lost Zone engine really opened the doors, but the thing with the Lost Origin meta, I remember, man, there were so many different decks that were popular, and some would argue that was bad for the game because the meta wasn't a centralized. It was so, like, random. Like, you could play, like, any random deck and do well with it. But in my opinion, that made for a fun format. When you have a bigger card pool to choose from and there were a lot more better cards, I don't know. I think the format was legit pretty good. I wish we could go back to Lost Origin format because it was also very short-lived. It didn't last that long because then we got Silver Tempest and Lugia, and we all know how that went. Looking back, man, Lost Origin was a legit good format. I'm going to put that in A tier. I thought it was good. There was so much variety. I liked it. I liked it a lot. I liked it. I'm going to put that in A tier. I really like the Lost Origin format. A great format. Great format. We're honestly, in my opinion, we're kind of going back to that format with rotation. I think that rotation kind of resets us back to that format where, like, we still have, like, Lugia, but Lugia isn't Lugia anymore. You know what I mean? It's not the same. It'll still be a really good deck, but it's not the same as it was before. So we're kind of going back to a similar-ish format with rotation to that Lost Origin format. Then we got the Silver Tempest meta, the one we're in right now. I mean, I'm going to give it C tier. I would call it one of the worst formats, but I don't know. Like, part of me kind of likes the diversity of what you can play because, like, there's not a whole lot to play. Don't get me wrong. Lugia gatekeeps a lot. Even Lost Box gatekeeps a lot of decks, right? Lost Box and Lugia both gatekeep a lot of decks, in my opinion. And that's what makes this format bad, is that Lugia and Lost Box both just gatekeep a lot of cool combos that you can't really play because they can't beat either decks. The thing that I like about this format, though, is the uniqueness you can have with something like Lugia and Lost Box. Lugia and Lost Box are great decks right now because there's so many ways you can play them. And I mean, I'm not saying there's so many ways to play Lugia, but Lugia can honestly play anything. You could literally play Lugia with like anything, and you could probably win a couple games with it. I mean, Lugia Flying Pikachu's a thing. You got Lugia Malamar. You got Lugia this and that. I don't know. Lugia is just so good that you can play with anything. And in my opinion, part of me appreciates that. If I wanted to go to Charlotte Regionals right now and I wanted to play Lugia Malamar, which I just said is a possibility, right? If I wanted to play something dumb like Lugia Malamar VMAX, play like 4 Marnie, 2 Judge, 2 Roxanne in my deck, I could probably do good with it because Lugia lets you do that. The problem is, I think that Lugia was just so good that it doesn't let anything else be good. And for that reason alone, I gotta put in C tier. I'm not gonna put in the trash tier because I don't think this format is as bad as people are making it out. Yes, the format is long sitting. It's a very long format. I'm not a fan of how long this format is. I think that is obviously one of the biggest issues, is that this format is just way too long, man. I freaking want it to end. It should have ended like a month ago, bro. It's a little ridiculous, but I don't know, man. I like it. There's actually a decent bit of diversity in the format. Like, even Lost Box right now, there's so many ways to play Lost Box with amazing rares. You have all the different, Vs you can pair it with. I don't know, man. I'm just a fan of that type of format. But at the same time, I still think the format's kind of bad. Just because there's cool things you can do in the format and a lot of diversity, a lot of room for improvement in teching, I can't call the format any higher than C tier. But part of me does appreciate this format a little bit, and part of me does like it a little bit. I think the problem is it's just gone on too long. And I think Lugia definitely, and even Lost Box to a degree, just kind of make the format not very fun because overall there's not much diversity, but there is diversity, if that makes any sense. It's kind of hard to explain. There's diversity, but there's not diversity. Best way to put it. We got the Black and White Legendary Treasures block. I mean, it was alright. You can put that in B tier, I guess. Again, it's like Team Plasma, Blastoise, Keldeo, Mewtwo, Darkrai, all that good stuff were kind of dominating. Legendary Treasures doesn't really give us anything. I don't think it gave us many new cards that were very good. There was like a lot of reprints, basically. Eternal, I'm not sure what that is. I guess it's like unlimited. No, there's unlimited right there. I'm not sure what Eternal is. I didn't play. I don't know. Didn't play that either. Expanded, I'm a huge fan of Expanded. I'm going to put that up in A tier. As a content creator, I love Expanded. But at the same time, I could see why people don't like Expanded. It's a very wild format. There's so many broken combos that exist that a lot of cards should really get banned. But I'm a huge advocate for Expanded. As a content creator, I like Expanded. I'm going to put Expanded in the A tier. Low-key want to put I want to put Expanded in S tier, but I know I'm going to get roasted for it. Even I don't think I can probably put it in S tier, to be honest. Like, I like Expanded a lot. I think it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of unique and creative things in the Expanded format. It just needs to be cleaned up a little bit. There's so many things you can do in the Expanded format. It's just so many ridiculously broken combos. Things need to be banned for the format to be S tier. But I think it's an A tier format. I love it because of the amount of possible combinations that exist. And I'm honestly going to miss Expanded with Live. Live doesn't have the black and white block now. I think Live will eventually get the black and white block. I don't think that's intentional. Like, I don't think that Live is supposed to be expanded list. Like, I don't think Expanded is going to go away with Live. I think that they just haven't coded all the cards yet for whatever reason. It's just, again, another reason why they should not be releasing Live right now is just, whatever, that's a different conversation. I hope Expanded really does come back, though, with Live, because I think that Expanded is a good format. I would put an S tier, but it's too much. There's too many things wrong with it for it to be S tier, but I think it's still a great time regardless with all the possible combinations and decks you can build. Like, if I were to upload only Expanded for a month, I think I could legit do that, not run out of ideas. That's how good the format is with creativity. Never played in that. Gym Leader Challenge is pretty good. I mean, we'll put in A tier. I'm not, like, I like Gym Leader Challenge a lot. I'm going to put an A tier. I don't think Gym Leader Challenge is an S tier format. I do think it's an A tier format, though. It's a fun format. It's fun to play. It's a nice break from, like, the reality of, like, 2 and 3 prizers being, like, insanely broken. It's a fun little, like, power creepless format that is fun to play. And I don't want to put it in S tier. I don't think it's an S tier format, but I do really like it a lot. I think it's definitely an A tier, maybe even one of the higher up A tier formats. HeartGold, SoulSilver to Call of Legends. Another solid format. Once again, very nostalgic for the early days. I still think that the HeartGold, SoulSilver, Noble Victories was better than the... Wait, you know what? The more I think about it, dang, I really want to put that in S tier. The more I think about it, man, I'm a sucker for the HeartGold, SoulSilver era. This is why I like Legacy so much. I'm very much debating putting that in S tier. That might be a hot take. No, you know what can go in S tier? Legacy itself. Yes. Screw it. We're going to put Legacy in the S tier. Yeah, no. I love Legacy. I am so sad to see Legacy go. I'm going to be doing a big Legacy send-off stream for before TCGO ends, so don't worry. It's not going to be the last you've seen of Legacy, but man, I'm going to miss Legacy a lot. What a great format. S tier format for sure. Yes, there are broken decks. Like, Virizion Genesect, in my opinion, is kind of OP. Snorlax and Vileplume are both pretty toxic cards for the game, but I don't think Legacy is a bad format at all. I love it. I love it. It's one of my favorite formats. Maybe it's just because it's like the only retro format you can play on TCGO, but I don't know. I just love it. I'm going to put it in S tier. Unlimited. Haven't really played it. It's basically like a bigger expanded format. I haven't played it, though. If I were to play it, I arguably would put it very high on the list because I like when there's a lot of different possibilities of options you can build decks around. And it's basically like a bigger expanded format, right? But I haven't played it before. X and Y Evolving Skies, the Night March format. I think actually... Oh, no, it's not Evolving... Why? Evolutions. I called it Evolving Skies again. I apologize. I called that Evolving Skies again. Oops, my bad. I meant Evolutions. XY Evolutions. You know what? Solid format. A tier. No, I thought XY to Evolutions was a solid format. Yeah, Night March was good, but you also like Greninja, Volcanion was good. Yeah, no, I thought it was a fine format. I'm gonna put that in the A tier. I liked it. That is my tier list for the popular formats. Not every format is on here, but for the most part, most of the big formats are. I think that this is pretty fine. This is all my opinion for the record. But let me know what you think down below. What other formats would you put in the trash tier? Any of the old formats that I never played in, do you think any of those should be in the trash tier? Let me know. I'd be curious to hear about that. I just think that I thought the whole of 2020, every format in 2020 was trash. I thought 2022 Worlds was so boring and dumb and one note that, like, I think it has to be one of the worst formats. The Astral Radiance format almost is in trash tier, but it wasn't quite as bad as the Worlds format because Worlds format was more figured out and people kind of figured out what was good. And that's why it just belongs in the trash. I just thought it was a dumb format, man. It was basically just win the coin flip, win the game, or win the coin flip, but lose to your opponent hitting you for weakness. It's not fun. There was no, like, it just wasn't cool. It sucked. It didn't take, honestly, it doesn't take much skill to do well in that format is basically how I'm going to put it. Because you just have to, bro, you could play 4 or 5 Pikachu in your deck, just auto win Palkia. It just sucks. It's a bad format. Just hitting for weakness shouldn't be what the format centralizes around, and that's what 2022 Worlds basically was. That is it for the tier list. Let me know what you thought down below. I will leave a link down below to this tier list if you want to do it yourself. But yeah, let me know what you think of my opinion on this tier list down below. I'd love to hear it. Thanks for watching. Hope you have a good day. If you haven't subbed to the second channel yet, make sure to click the subscribe button down below. Leave a like in the video if you enjoyed. And let me know if you want to see more tier lists. I am working on doing a couple more tier lists because there's some more that I did see and I do want to try. And yeah, that'll be it. Hope you have a good day. Bye-bye.